The Short and Short Mike DJ Kelly podcast.
This is the Mike Kelly podcast. This is the Mike Kelly podcast.
Mike Kelly.
Whoops.
Mike Kelly.
So here we go, wham bam, with another ratings juggernaut of the cram-packed audio adventure that's all squeezed and stuffed into what we call the Mike DJ Kelly Shorter Than Short podcast. Unlike the last podcast, we're now allowed to talk politics again. So let's go with the theme, political or satirical.
This is the Shorter Than Short podcast with Mike Kelly.
So put a florin in the slot, insert the battery, press the start button, and let's get going in a political and satirical style. Yes, it was a late change from Colin or Cuthbert, so as we're allowed to get back to normal life and go to pubs, restaurants as we did before, but will we go back to how we used to be? Or are there elements of lockdown that we'll like to keep?
On this week's podcast.
Coming up on this Shorter Than Short podcast, voting, car stickers, happy birthday, gender recognition, charities, carrier bags, competitions, and a whole lot more.
This is the Shorter Than Short Mike Kelly podcast.
Results in, and the Labour Party took a thrashing. Why? Is it because all the hardcore Labour voters left when Jeremy stepped down? Why is everybody voting for Fridge Man and Sleaze Central to be the party of power? Is it because the UK mainstream media does not tell the whole story? Why don't people vote in local elections? According to the BBC 2019 stats, only a third of eligible voters vote in local elections. How did the 4 million on universal credit, the 1.1 million health staff and 6.5 million union members vote? Maybe they just did not vote. Didn't they see it as an opportunity to improve things for all? There was a candidate in the London mayoral election promising many things if they got into power. These included London Bridge to be repaired, no shop to sell croissants for more than £1, and Trafalgar Square, Sir David Attenborough to be placed on the 4th plinth, London to join the EU, and on one day every year the escalators on the Underground to be reversed. Big hurrah for Boom Radio, who are not only winning in the ratings, but they're now giving away car stickers, like radio stations did in the 60s and 70s. I think a lot of other radio stations will follow suit so as not to be outdone by this extremely low-budget way of promoting their stations.
This is the Shorter Than Short podcast with Mike Kelly.
And the answer before the question is Stuart McConey. What's the question? A lot of people on social media saying that John Lewis's Christmas ad came out early. No, it was John Lewis in the news due to Fridgeman's questionable decorating choices at number 10. Who's still singing Happy Birthday for 20 seconds whilst washing their hands? I thought so. And talking of the beast that is COVID-19, how come when encouraging us to go for our jab, did nobody warn us that half the population will feel shit for a couple of days after their first AstraZeneca shot?
This is the Shorter Than Short podcast with Mike Kelly.
If you want to send your own stories for the next episode, email please, send them to email hello@mikedjkelly.co.uk or on Twitter @MikeKellyDisco. Don't forget to tell us a bit about yourself so we know who you are. Based on the science, looking at the evidence, it's competition time and guess the song. What song are these lines from? The pretty little raven at the Birdman stand taught him how to do the bop and it was grand. He started going steady and bless my soul, he outbopped the buzzard and the oriole. Name the song or the artiste or both. Those lines again. The pretty little raven at the Birdman stand taught him how to do the bop and it was grand. He started going steady and bless my soul, he outbopped the buzzard and the oriole. Name the song or the artiste or both. Out there on Twitter, Paul, if I have a bottle of white and a bottle of red wine tonight, they will cancel each other out yin-yang style, won't they? And I'll feel fine in the morning? ? Dave Lee, it's clearly going to be frosty until August. I'm planting my peas out today and they'll have to decide to either toughen up or die. John Dredge, what is the most boring thing that has ever happened to you? It must be really boring. Two-tone with a dash. Why don't Aldi create a caterpillar cake and put it in full bondage gear, then use the tagline, "This isn't just any caterpillar cake, this is an S&M caterpillar cake."
This is the Shorter Than Short Mike Kelly podcast.
And there's nothing stranger than the truth. The government is dropping the price of gender recognition certificates. They dropped from £140 to £5. That's a massive saving, but when do you need one of these certificates? I'm still the same sex I was at the time of my birth, and I have never been asked for anything along these lines. Is it a bit like being told it's a Ford Cortina, but it looks like a Minute, and you have to prove it's a Cortina?
This is the Shorter Than Short podcast with Mike Kelly.
Blimey. Carrier bags, the cost of which until now was just 5p, has now doubled to 10p for every single-use carrier bag sold from any shop. In 2014, 7.6 billion bags were given away to customers at England's 7 largest supermarkets. That's equivalent of 140 per member of the population. Charges for bags were brought in by the man who set us on our Brexit trail. What's a little unclear is, where do all the 10p's from carrier bags go?
This is the Shorter Than Short podcast with Mike Kelly.
I hear Joe Biden's German Shepherd dog, Major, has had his second biting incident in a month. Love the Amazon ad with the beardy blokey who starts talking by saying, "We have a responsibility at Amazon and electric vans, blah-de-blah. I personally feel the responsibility they have is to pay some tax on the many billions they've made in Europe instead of paying nothing."
This is the Shorter Than Short podcast with Mike Kelly.
This week's do-gooders can be found at stgeorgescrypt.org.uk. They are a charity from Leeds and offer care, compassion and hope to homeless, the vulnerable and those suffering from substance dependence. 365 days a year, with your support, we've helped transform the lives of thousands of people in Leeds over the last 90 years. 10,920 beds provided last year for occupants needing a safe and warm place to sleep. 65,700 meals and hot food for our residents and other people in need, courtesy of our catering team. 12,382 hot showers provided last year to anyone in need. Donate, volunteer or leave a legacy. Find out more at stgeorgescrypt.org.uk. If you like art with nice vibrant colours, check out Conor Murgatroyd from Riddleston near Keighley, but who is now based in London.
This is the Shorter Than Short podcast with Mike Kelly.
Stand by for a moan. TV presenters used to be better before autocue came along. Game shows, documentaries, wherever they are just reading words in front of them. In the old days before autocue, the presenters had to do it themselves from memory or make it up on the spur of the moment. So much more entertaining. Been thinking while watching some of these week format shows, should programmes be on TV if having a picture does not add value to the programme? I mean, if Bradders and The Chase was on the radio, would you lose any of the show's vital qualities? It would still be a quiz, you'd still get the personalities of all involved, and you'd still get all the questions and answers.
This is the Mike Kelly podcast.
I always used to quite fancy going to Jersey for a holiday with its Mediterranean temperatures and closeness to the UK. Well, that was until I looked at the price of a holiday on Jersey. How come it costs so much more to stay there than France or Spain? I digress. Who'd want to be on Jersey now, with the French threatening to pull the plug on their electricity supply and the harbours clogged up with French fishing boats, and on the horizon is a British gunboat? What has it all come to?
This is the Shorter Than Short podcast with Mike Kelly.
Quotes and cuts of this show may be used, but remember all material has to be got from somewhere and somebody has to put some effort into getting it to you. So please credit us, send a cheque or buy us a coffee. That's the Mike DJ Kelly Shorter Than Short podcast. If you're not sure where to find the Mike DJ Kelly Shorter Than Short podcast, just Google it. Out there on Twitter, shower thoughts. Being open to admitting that you're wrong is one of the most undervalued personality traits. Rhys Dinsdale, I would have a skip 365 days of the year if my finances would allow it. My ambition is to live junk-free. P66 Animation. Conor Murgatroyd is an emerging British artist based in London, originally from Bradford. Die Coke. I'd love to go back to Bradford. I studied there and miss the curries and cheap beer.
This is the Shorter Than Short Mike Kelly podcast.
Guess the celebrity, born on the 1st of June 1950 with the Christian names Thomas Giles. He is a British singer-songwriter, bassist, radio presenter and long-time LGBT rights activist. Best known for big hits with the band using his name, but he also had a number 6 hit in the UK singles chart with his solo single War Baby. He was inspired by John Peel's The Perfumed Garden on pirate radio station Radio London and by a visit from Alexis Corner, the legendary bluesman and broadcaster transfixed a room full of people using nothing but his voice and an acoustic guitar. The whole direction of our mystery celebrity's life and career suddenly became clear to him. Who is he?
This is the Shorter Than Short podcast with Mike Kelly.
When a warning light came on in the daughter's car, it got me thinking, why do we get a warning light and then have to take it to the garage for someone to plug in a bit of kit that gives you a code that tells you what the problem is? Why not, instead of showing a warning light, show the code so we know exactly what the fault is and can make an informed decision on how to fix it, instead of the warning light so that you have to pay a dealer to find out the cause of the issue. And just for the record, I will not be buying the new Vauxhall Mocha, the one the pigeons like. Don't understand the pigeons. By the way, do you think the way car TV commercials are done is now to blame for the younger generation not knowing a flipping thing about how a car works? As commercials these days do not tell you a flipping thing about the car, they just show it being driven around with fun friends. No wonder they've no idea about jacking points or where the spare tyre is, or indeed if it has a spare tyre.
This is the Shorter Than Short podcast with Mike Kelly.
I think we've had enough public information messages during the last year that there are certain things you do not hear as often as they used to be. I swear, when I was a kid, you used to hear the term Checkpoint Charlie mentioned a lot. Not sure when I last heard anybody use it. I don't think the BBC or ITV use the term Sleaze Central enough. I hear some people are using peanut butter instead of normal butter, which is plain weird. And from acronym Central, what does PDA stand for? I'd not heard of it before. Public Display of Affection.
This is the Shorter Than Short podcast with Mike Kelly.
Here's the question to the answer we gave you earlier. Who's the head of the Ramblers Association? Yes, it's Stuart McConey.
This is the Mike Kelly podcast.
In the meanwhile, do you think companies who fire and rehire should stop it? As up until this came along, you would lay people off or make them redundant. It just seems to take away all workers' rights. On a similar note, should conservative plants in key jobs be allowed? No, let me put it another way. Should people with strong political connections be allowed to take key roles at companies on inflated salaries purely because of who they know? I mean Dyson getting Fridge Man's phone number after setting on the PM's brother as an advisor? Here's the stat: diabetes time bomb. New figures show almost 5 million people are currently living with diabetes in the UK, with 90% suffering from type 2. Some 4.1 million have a diagnosis and a further 850,000 have the condition but are yet to be told.
This is the Shorter Than Short Mike Kelly podcast.
Fake Showbiz News at Fake Showbiz News on Twitter. Beyoncé say Jay-Z may be one of the world's greatest rapper, but is surprisingly hesitant at road junctions. He'll often let 3 or 4 good opportunities go by before finally emerging, she told BBC Radio Devon. Emma Bunting says she saw a yellow and black ladybird in her garden the other day. Harry Styles says he's so excited for tonight's Line of Duty season's finale, he might limit his phone usage to 7 or 8 quick glances across the hour. BBC to screen new documentary about people who won't try any soup except for Heinz tomato soup.
This is the Shorter Than Short podcast with Mike Kelly.
Don't forget, pod pickers, if you want to get in touch about anything to do with the Shorter Than Short podcast show, please use the following to contact us. And if you have any stories, gossip, jokes, or anything for the next episode, email hello@mikedjkelly.co.uk, on Twitter @MikeKellyDisco. If you have time, it would be appreciated if you could give us a review on any feedback sites.
This is the Shorter Than Short podcast with Mike Kelly.
Found it interesting that at the end of the party political broadcast that the BBC announced, party political broadcasts can be viewed on the BBC iPlayer. I mean, who needs that? In the recent bout of party political broadcasts, one party used a trick of making it look like it was recorded on a mobile phone. So in the centre of the screen, with the left and right hand sides of the screen just blank background, I mean, what's the point of a 43-inch telly if you're only going to use a third of the screen? Talking of strange things, the Yellow Arch people say, McDonald's, breakfast done properly. I mean, what?
This is the Shorter Than Short podcast with Mike Kelly.
On my day of reading the news on BCB 106.6 FM and home recording just prior to broadcast time, I found myself with a problem in the neighbours having a skip delivered, one Hermes delivery van and a postman all at the same time meant that Winston the German Shepherd would not stop barking. Not exactly what you need in the background on the 1pm news.
This is the Shorter Than Short podcast with Mike Kelly.
Whose idea was it? Who came up with park and ride? Who thought it was a good idea to drive from home to near the place you're going, to pay to park in a wilderness car park and catch a bus? Maybe promote catching the bus or train and leaving the car at home, or make city centres bigger so there are more streets to park on.
This is the Mike Kelly podcast.
I see the whinging aviation industry has been in the news for telling porkies about their green credentials, not using the correct stats for the forest they are planting to offset their carbon emissions. Watch out for E171 whitener in food. It's about to get banned because it's not good for you. Fridge Man or Fridge Magnet's new briefing room cost us £2.6 million is no longer being used, if it ever was used. Talk customer outrage as those fixed into fixed price broadband face a £24 a year price rise. Number of gamblers trying to block themselves online surges. National Self-Exclusion Scheme, GameStop, recorded a 21% rise in new registrations in February. The number of younger people with a driving licence in Great Britain is at the lowest on record, as the figure falls to 2.97 million in the 16 to 25 age range with a full licence.
This is the Shorter Than Short Mike Kelly podcast.
Final burst from Twitter. Sheena, looking at the state of these queues, will be outside at 8 p.m. tonight clapping for Primark staff. David Brooks, when I took an electrical item to the household waste site, I was shocked to see so many Dysons lined up. The operative smiled at my puzzled face and said, our most popular range. Chris Choi, sales of hoodie blankets up 781% as pub gardens open according to a leading supplier. Shay Wesley Martin, now that I'm fully vaccinated, I just want you to know I still won't be able to make that thing because I don't want to come. Julie Prunes, note to self, please ask do I really need this before clicking buy now. I'm 48. Sheena, 14 cups of tea later, I'm still going strong.
This is the Shorter Than Short podcast with Mike Kelly.
If you want to get in touch with this top-rated and sometimes much listened to podcast, please contact email hello@mikedjkelly.co.uk, Twitter @MikeKellyDisco. Indeed, if you want a podcast making for your business or need any help with radio producer or presentation work, travel news, voiceover work, please get in touch. Please tell your friends about the podcast. All they need to do to find it is search on Google for the Mike DJ Kelly Shorter Than Short podcast. Okay, it's time to go. Guess the song. What song are these lines from? The pretty little raven at the Birdman stand taught him how to do the bop, and it was grand. He started going steady, and bless my soul, he outbopped the buzzard at the Oriole. Name the song and the artist or both. It was the Jackson 5 with Rockin' Robin. Guess the celebrity? He's a British singer-songwriter, bassist, radio presenter and long-time LGBT rights activist. Best known for big UK hits with a band using his name, but also a number 6 hit in the UK singles chart with his solo single War Baby. He was inspired by John Peel's Perfume Garden on the pirate radio station Radio London, and by a visit from Alexis Corner, the legendary bluesman and broadcaster transfixed a room full of people using nothing but his voice and an acoustic guitar. The whole direction of our mystery celebrity's life and career became suddenly clear to him. Who is he? It's none other than Tom Robinson. Guess what? That's enough for this edition of the Crazy Shorter Than Short Shabby Podcast Show. From me, Mike Kelly, thank you for listening. Please take care out there, and remember you can always find the podcast by searching or shouting Mike DJ Kelly Podcast. Whoops.
Mike Kelly.
This is the Mike DJ Kelly podcast.
This is the Mike Kelly podcast.
Mike Kelly.